Okay. All right. Audio is fine. So, welcome everyone. My name is Sopot Cela. I work for Red Hat, and I'm actually a developer of the Eclipse IDE, committer in a couple of platform projects, and I've been using Eclipse IDE for many years now. And the reason that I'm doing this talk of developer-oriented, the way that I call it, marketing at the Eclipse Java IDE, is because I always was kind of bothered of how big a gap there is between marketing and developers in terms of how they present their products, both content-wise and also style-wise, in their strategy of how to connect with the developers for your tools. Okay, so what is it that I'm going to actually talk about? So I'll show you. This is basically a Twitter account which I set up some months ago, and it has tips and tricks like this one, for example, which I will transfer to the other screen. Like this one. This is one of the most popular ones, for example. It's a very simple thing. Like if your ID variables is null, you can run into a null pointer exception if you do the equals with the ID in front. But if you put the string literal in front, then you don't run into a null pointer exception. And this is really common if you read code in many places. So Eclipse has this nice, it's a quick fix basically. You do control-1 over the equals, and it asks you to invert the equals. And this also became really a hot topic between people, because they were like saying, like one guy said no, and he came up with some other code and all that. So it started to become quite a hot topic. But the point is that this is the kind of tips and tricks that I'm sort of producing in this account. I'll show you another one. This is a Java 9 one. So in Java 9 you can have private interfaces. And this one is really simple in the sense that I just have two tabs. One is named Java 8 interface, the other is named Java 9, and then there is an error in the first one and there is no error in the second one. This is in principle what it is about. This one doesn't include any cool completion or editing, but the point is that people really like these, and you see there's quite some activity on it, and then it goes like this for many other tips. And this is another funny one. This is probably one of the most popular tips which have come out, and this is the block selection. It's basically very simple. I mean, if you do Alt-Shift-A, you create a line, and then you can edit. Yeah, I think this is popular in Vim or some similar IDEs, but this also caused really some, let's say, surprises, and people think, well, is this really possible in an IDE? And this is basically the core of the whole effort here, to have this kind of content pop out. And this was also quite popular, and then Jay Billings was quite creative in replying, and then Wayne was also quite creative in replying to him. So this kind of GIFs and this short, I think that this one is a bit more than 10 seconds, but it's mainly 10 seconds. GIFs, they are quite, turned out to be quite popular. So this is more or less in a shell what this whole thing is about. Let me get back to the notes. Okay. So how popular is it? I've started working on this so the idea came on February, and I started working on this in March, which is, I think, how much is it, 6 months ago or something? And yeah, maybe more. And yeah, July was one of the most popular months. So the one that you see there on the left is coming from the Twitter analytics of what kind of, they provide really, I'll show you later, they provide really detailed statistics on how each tweet did and what kind of audience you have. And so you see there the number of impressions is 372,000, and impression is defined by Twitter as being the number of users, or the number of times that any given user has seen this, a certain tweet. So that is a number quite high, considering that it's basically half an hour of my day every day. Yeah, you see there are 67 tweets for this number, but this includes some short replies or some short, let's say, we do some minor support with the account. So if people say, oh, I have this error, if it's a very known common error, we say, oh yeah, do this, and then they say, okay, thanks. So it includes those kind of support tweets. But mostly, the content-wise, it's one per working day. So that means it's between 23, 25, or even sometimes 30 tweets per month, which get that amount of impressions. And the growth is quite fast in terms of new followers. We're getting, now that one is a peak, so we don't get that much like every month, but we do get 500 to 600 followers every month, or sometimes 4. And one major thing also was that these other accounts that picked them up, so you can see in the screenshot, this was really popular Java tweet here from the Java account, which has 300, probably 80,000 nowadays followers, and that means a lot to us, because it's they are basically advertising the account there, and then just for that tweet we got hundreds and hundreds of followers. So the Java account people at Oracle, I communicate with them often, and they are quite excited about this and keep helping us with sharing the content. So let me quickly tell you why I came up with it. And so I felt the classical way of companies to reach and talk to developers is somewhat ineffective. If you go, for example, to not just Eclipse, but if you go to Microsoft's page or Google page or whatever, they are not meant for this stuff. You don't see their tips and tricks, or not just tips and tricks, but any kind of indication how to use Google or how to use Microsoft, because that's really not the place. So I felt that there was a need for this kind of stuff, because if people go on a social media and they search Eclipse, they mostly don't want to see the investor announcements. They just want to see something about the IDE. So it was kind of approaching this the other way around, rather than marketing people trying to work with developers with content. This was basically me as a developer with some kind of marketing smelling powers, let's say, to try and see what we could do from the side of someone who really knows the software very well and really knows the target group very well, which is also quite important, because I'm a developer myself and I know how developers think, more or less, what kind of types they are in a majority of ways, and this and that. And it's usually totally a different bunch from marketing people, so I thought it's a nicer way to do it. And yeah, the Eclipse Foundation Twitter handle, which is managed by the Eclipse Foundation people, has also been quite helpful in sharing our content. They just keep doing what they're already doing, and I'm taking care of this part of actually developer-oriented marketing, as I call it. These are the 2 strategic goals, more or less. It's basically as you can see, they're making Eclipse Java capabilities known to as much developers as possible. So the first one is the spread of the word. But hey, Eclipse can do this invert equals, which is very useful. I'm pretty sure probably not everyone here knew about that, but I'm sure that if you show that to like 300,000 people that follow Java account, most of them will say, oh, that's nice. That's a nice tip for me to use every day, because otherwise I'll have to do some fancy copy and pasting here and there and making sure that the cursor is at the right place. So first is the reach, to make as many Eclipse developers know about this stuff and the capabilities that the Eclipse Java IDE offers. And then there is the one that are using these capabilities already, and that also they are a big target group to make them as more effective as possible, because I've seen people who are using Eclipse for like 7 or 10 years and they still do manually the getters and setters and write down public get this, and they just manually type everything. But in reality, Eclipse has really more, is really equipped so that you don't do this time wasting manual coding. So, but let's say the super goal of it is to make this thing useful for developers, not investors, not let's say marketing people looking at the account, not interested people, just plain developers going into this account and making their life easier. This is the super goal, let's say, but these are the two which I usually try and split every couple of days. 1 day for one and 1 day for the other. And then there's, yeah, of course, there's a hidden goal there, which I have kind of hidden, not very well, of course, but the point is that our competitors are way more funded and way more, they put way more people into this kind of stuff. And then, of course, it hurts us if we just stay and do nothing. And they show some features which we have had for many, many years, and they sell them as new. And there have been cases, I probably should have shown that. So we showed the feature in Eclipse, and then some guy said, oh great, this finally we have it 5 years after IntelliJ. And then I went into the code base, or Mikkel, went into the code base, and we picked the actual commit which put that feature in, and it turned out that we had it 5 years before IntelliJ. So that means that we had that really a long time ago. But people just get with the flow in terms of the more you talk about it, then the more people believe you. So this was also a sort of a fight back in that sense, because it's really not good when you have able competitors to just sit and watch and say, oh, well, we'll be fine anyway. So this was also quite a motivation behind it. How is this run, actually? So it's me who have access to this account, and it's Mikkel Istria, which also works for Red Hat in the same team as I do, and Nupur Gupta from IBM. Mikkel takes care mostly of sort of these people that say, have some thoughts, or I don't like this about Eclipse, I don't like about that about Eclipse and all of that, and he goes after and gets some real feedback, because we see a lot of these, what I call the rage quits, like you have in gaming, like I don't care, and then they go to Twitter and they complain, but there's nothing constructive there that you can read and say, oh, this could be improved. And Michael goes and kind of softly tries to get the real feedback behind it. So, and also Nupur helps out with the content sometimes, mostly with the new stuff like JUnit 5 and Java 9. She makes sure that I know where to get the content for the GIFs. You see there, I built a set of guidelines which we all use. I do this every working day at the same moment, usually roughly at 12 between 1, that's my lunch break. I basically have targeted 1 content tweet per day, because I plan for this to be in an evening news format, so it's same time almost every day people go and get their tip, and that has worked pretty well in terms of people really waiting at a given time, and I see that I tweet something and then I have like 10 or 15 people that retweet just right after I tweet it. So they have an expectation now that I will be tweeting at this time, and that is quite nice to see. One other thing that I want to mention here is that I've made a couple of deals with the Java account and some German magazine and some also the JUnit account. So whenever I tweet something about Java 9, I put a hashtag on it on Java 9, as you saw the public, the private interface one. And then there is one person in Oracle who manages the Java account, and they actually retweet it if it's in a format that we agree. And that really helps a lot with the reach, as you can imagine, because they had like probably, yeah, they have way more reach than I do for now. The other deal I made is with JUnit 5 people. They're also quite interested in it. And now JUnit 5 is out, and I'm sort of have a campaign on it, and every day I push something about some cool feature in JUnit 5, and that also is retweeted by a whole bunch of JUnit 5 people. They are really eager, because when you think in the beginning, say, oh, why would they be so nice to me, and then say, oh, I will just retweet everything that Sopot tweets. But the thing is that what they like is the content. So if I am able to make that GIF, which people think interesting, they are really, really eager to retweet it. But they don't want to do it themselves. But I've done it now every day for some months, and I'm good at it. So it takes 10 minutes or 15 minutes for me. I just put the GIF in there, and then they say, "Oh, that's great. I'll retweet it." So the style, you saw more or less. It's mainly short GIFs, around 10 to maximum 15 seconds. I've experimented with longer and all that, but I think this is a good balance for in terms of time. Yeah, you put some nice caption there. In some of the tweets, I also put content which is supposed to be in the future releases, but that's not something that goes very well according to my analytics, because the value of this thing is that when people see that, they really want to go and try it. So if they see it, they say, oh, let's open my Eclipse and try this out. This is the feeling that I got from their reactions, because they react and then they say, I tried it, didn't work for my machine because I had this and that. So they go and try things. And if you tell them, this is a really cool feature, but you will have to download the milestone 2 of Eclipse SDK and all of that, they say, whatever, I'll wait for the real thing to come up and then I'll do it. So it brings down the engagement with the tweet, which is not what I want to. And I made this nice hashtag, the Eclipse tips. I insisted on it for a long time, and then also people started to come up with their own tweets and put the hashtag Eclipse tips on it. People that were following the account, they say, oh, this looks cool, I know something that I want to share. Because these small things, what they make a difference when you show the GIFs, is that people want to share them. They see it, they think it's really cool, and they want to tell, well, they can probably tell their colleagues, but most of them, they want to also share what they know. So it becomes, they started to do this Eclipse tips themselves. So I started now, because I monitor the hashtag, of course, in my tweet deck, and then I started seeing these people tweeting and saying, oh, look at the tip that I know, and then I retweet that, and they get happy about it, and they keep going, and they keep going. There is a catch there, because they have their own style, which sometimes is a bit different from my style, and I want to have a sort of conformity in the whole thing. Like, for example, the GIFs that I make are mostly focused on the area, I can show you here, like they are mostly focused on this area where the action is going. Otherwise, if I record the whole screen, then this would be really small and people won't be able to see. But if you get tweets from other people, then they have their own style, so I sometimes try to get them to conform to this kind of style. Okay, next one. How do I produce the content? I get this question quite often, also in the Twitter account. Hey, what do you use to make these nice GIFs? So in terms of tooling, I use something called Byzance on Fedora. It's short, I think it's Byzantum, the name of the tool, but this is the command line thing. It's called Byzance Record. I'll show you actually, because we'll do one now. It's a command line tool. I mean, I'm a developer. I have an XY width, height, which I memorize where it is in the screen, and I just do it. There's really probably fancier ways of doing it, but I'm used to it, so that's what I use. It's really simple. As I said, I use these campaigns. And now I'll show you one thing which I actually, while I was in the platform summit and people were asking me about this, there was Danny Maggard that told me, hey, there's also this nice thing which could be interesting to share. And I thought, yeah, I'll do that in the talk actually. So I'll try to mirror my screen because it's nicer like that. Yeah, I didn't consider the change in resolution when I did this. But yeah, that probably is not going to work with this kind of resolution. But let me see if I can just do it here. I'll try it anyway. I have a backup GIF that actually worked. So, I'll bring back the mirror. Okay, so the actual trick is really simple. So if you have code from somewhere else that is not Eclipse, usually like this is gedit basically, so you can get this from anywhere, from websites or just anything unrelated to Eclipse, and then you copy it, and then you go here in the package explorer and then you do paste. It actually creates all the boilerplate for you. And I knew that it creates the package, but then it told me it actually creates a real project. And I thought, yeah, this is nice, and you can just run it. So with 3 clicks, you don't need to create a project, you don't need to create a package, you don't need to create a source folder, you don't need to create a class and paste the code. You just right-click and paste it, and it will create all the boilerplate for you. So the way that I actually do it, as I said, the resolution is not going to be quite good, but this is the command that I use. It's called Byzantine record, pretty simple. It starts on this is I know this by heart basically after doing it many times, that the start will be somewhere here, and this width and this height on my screen resolution would be somewhere here, and then I basically, so this says that just show the cursor there, and I need the cursor for people to see. And then the duration of the recording, 10 seconds, and then there is the delay, which is 2 seconds, enough for me to close this and then go and do the actual thing. So I'll just try and do it here, even though I probably don't think so. Yeah, I press this here, and then I go here, and I say copy, paste, run. And now it will show somewhere here that the recording is done. And I go, and yeah, it went into the screen cap recording.gif. And then if I go to this folder, which I keep here, it will be this recording. Yeah, it actually looks better than I expected. So yeah, it's this easy for me once I know the feature. And now this will repeat, of course, because that's the nice thing of GIFs. They repeat so many times that it gets into people's head really fast, and then they remember it very easily. And then what I do, so I'll use this one which I have pre-recorded, which looks a bit nicer in terms of resolution and all that. So I take this GIF and I go to my tweet deck and I say new tweet. I say here. I haven't thought about this actually. So say if you paste code from outside Eclipse in the package explorer, it will create all the boilerplate for you. There it goes. Eclipse tips. Add image or video. This is the one that I want. Let me make sure I didn't make some spelling mistake. Yeah, it looks good. And I say tweet, and this is one right there. It's a real thing. It's out there now. So this is what I do more or less every day around my lunch break. And one thing that I do now is I send an email, for example, to the Eclipse Foundation people that, hey, could you retweet this? And then they do, mostly, and then the message spreads. And then if it were a JUnit 5 thing, I put the JUnit 5 tag there, and then the JUnit 5 people pick it up, and then they retweet it. The same with Java 9 and the Java people. This is also a question that I get often. How do I decide what I want to show? Because there are so many things in Eclipse, and you can show so many things. But the Twitter analytics are quite useful in this regards. And the reason they are useful is that for everything that I show, so let's say this tweet, view tweet activity. So I know that, for example, this tweet about JUnit 5, it got around 16,000 impressions, which is quite good. And this is because there is a GIF in it, this is because there is JUnit 5 mentioned there, and this and that. So I make lots of tries, like I experiment quite a lot, and depending on what I see as in terms of total engagements and all of that, I use this to refine my strategy and really quickly understand what works and what doesn't work. Like I try here, for example, the longer GIFs, and they didn't really work as well, so it wasn't, and probably that was because they require a bigger attention span. Like if you put a 1 minute GIF, then people will really not have the patience to stare at it for 1 minute, maybe as much as they would have for a 10-second one. So they just, you don't have these media engagements as much, for example. And I really use this out of whatever you can. So the real source of the tips is because I've been using Eclipse for a long time and I know a lot about it. But then also I see people coding and this and that. So the core source is basically my skills with Eclipse. But then this is very useful to also refine it, because you can show so many things in Eclipse, and that doesn't mean that you have to show them all. But analytics is quite good to refine and then go and push on which one is really the best one. There's also, so since there is quite a lot of exposure for our account, so we make a tweet and then people come back with all sorts of things. Some say, oh thank God, I really love this feature. Some say, why don't you use NetBeans? And some say, yeah, all sorts of exposure. I mean, the more famous you get with this stuff, the more you get on this. But we don't do any kind of troll feeding from this account, because you have to have some sort of composure in terms of just keeping in mind the strategy and what you're trying to achieve, rather than feeding trolls. It's really getting people to be exposed as this. Mikkel does some of it, and sometimes really helps, but he does it from his own account, so we've bypassed that in that way. The really nice important thing is that we've become a central place for the feedback, both good and bad. So even when people have something good to say about Eclipse, they reference this account, and when they have something bad to say, they also reference this account. And it's a good measure for us to see how the sort of the general sentiment is, because we see trends there going up and going down. But now when people want to talk about the Eclipse IDE, they don't use the foundation handle anymore. I don't think they ever used it anyway. But they use this handle because this is where the developers feel more connected with. So no, we don't feed the trolls. I think that's pretty much on it. I mean, there is another talk about how to market your, yeah, exactly on time. How to market your project from another red header. That will be in the Willem Kramer behind room if you like this kind of stuff. And I think that's it from my side, and it's question time. Does anyone have any kind of question? Yeah?
If you tweet, this is one short thing. It's hard to look at later. Do you have plans to tweet the same thing again later, which was successful, maybe, or include these GIFs into Eclipse release notes, maybe, so that the valuable snippets that you do are conserved for later?
Yeah, so I think your question has two parts. First, do I kind of recycle the tweets in a way within Twitter? That I do recycle some of them, because I actually did one that I had forgotten that I had done before, and I didn't mean to do that, but it was the block selection, and it was way more successful than the first time. And I didn't expect that. I would expect people will say, you already showed this, or did you run out of tips or something? But that didn't work like that. They were really much happier the second time. So I don't retweet the same GIF. That's something that I never do, reuse the same actual GIF, but I show the same feature in different scenarios, and basically the block selection. So one was to put final on everything. I had like a list of 10 variables, and then I used it to put final on everything. And then another way, at another moment, I used it to just put something else. I don't remember, or probably it was this one where I did public string before the field. So this is a case where I recycle the actual feature, but not the GIF. And then the second part, or what's the plan on going inside Eclipse for this? So in terms of future work, supposing that my day had 30 hours and I would have time to do it, it would have two main things. I would spread this on other social media, like maybe LinkedIn or Facebook, which are also quite a big place where the developers live in a way. And then the other one was to have a tips and tricks inside Eclipse, which would get fed out of these GIFs. That's a pretty delicate topic, because we all know how fed up people are when they see a tips and tricks dialog pop up. So we're thinking of something called the RSS feeds that you get onto your notification area, which means lower right, and then the tips would come up there only with some link, and then if you like it, you would click it. This is in the plans. I haven't had time to actually go and implement them, but we want to do that because we have the most important thing, or the most valuable thing, which is the content. We have the GIFs. You go into Twitter now since March, you can calculate probably a couple of hundred of these tips, and then the content is there. Now it's just a matter of finding the channels to spread that. So, yeah. Any other question? Yeah.
Similar direction. We do have a big monitor on our company showing blended clips and all kinds of interesting stuff. And I was trying to show random tweets of your account, but I didn't manage. Do you know of any possibility to just go into the random tweet of your account and browse? Because I basically can always show only the latest one, but I want to really go through all of them.
Yeah, I don't know if there is a way, I guess, to show random tweets. I think that's more or less a feature that would come out of the Twitter website, because ultimately that's, but you could make a sort of a Java program to get all the URLs, and then there are really a lot of tools to randomly pick out of so there are tools like Selenium and all that, which I use for UI testing, but you can sort of make it pick up a certain URL, which is random out of just a Java program. And then the list of the tweets you have to manually paste at some point, because that's not easy. You could do some trick with some HTML crawling, but I don't think there is a feature which I can help with. I mean, that would have to come from the Twitter website. But it's nice to know that you use it. Yeah. Any other question? Yeah. Yes, I'll get you. Oh, in terms of time, so it takes me between 15 and 20 minutes from the moment that I decide to do it to the moment when it's out. Because it's like 10 minutes to produce the GIF, maybe 5 minutes to come up with the right wording. You know, this thing, which word will get the X, because you're behind the limit and you have to cut some words, and it's always a dilemma. Do I get rid of this word, which would be a shorter word? This process takes like 10 minutes also. But then I send it out in usually 20 minutes, and then there is some monitoring on how did it go after like the next hour or so, but that's just refreshing the analytics to see how did the thing go. But in terms of real effort, during which I don't do anything else, it is maximum half an hour per day. That's the thing, and that shows of the popularity, because there are armies of marketing people, and they usually don't have this kind of reach that you could have with just some GIFs. So the next one.
Actually, not really a question. thank you for this initiative. That's really helpful.
Yeah.
And especially also for your hidden goal.
Yeah.
That's my goal.
Yeah.
And it's, I think it's really, really important thing that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you very much. All right, thanks then, and for the next talk. Yeah.